Hello, my name is Anatoly Motkin, and I am president of StrategEast. Today we're presenting the Westernization Award in the political Westernization category to Mr. Karl Bildt. Due to the pandemic and travel restrictions this year, the award is handed over remotely. Karl Bildt, along with Radoslav Sikorsky, are awarded the Political Westernization Award for launching the Eastern Partnership Initiative. Over the past decade, the collective efforts of the EU and the Eastern neighbors, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine, have brought considerable benefits to the citizens, including more trade, mobility, increased economic development, and better quality of life. Karl Bildt is a co-chair of the European Council of Foreign Relations, and he served both as a Prime Minister and the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Sweden. Mr. Bildt, let me ask you a few questions about the history, present, and future of the Eastern Partnership. And the first, the Eastern Partnership was created with the intention to provide an avenue for discussions of trade, economic strategy, travel agreements, and other issues between the EU and its Eastern European neighbors. It aims also at building of a common area of shared democracy, prosperity, stability, and increased cooperation. To what extent has the Eastern Partnership succeeded in fulfilling the mission for which it was created within the last 10 years?
Well, there have been, of course, notable successes. I think you alluded to it. We have concluded deep and comprehensive free trade agreements with Ukraine, with Moldova, with Georgia, and they've undoubtedly had a positive transformative effect upon the economies and societies in these three cases. There's also been an improvement in mobility. These three countries that I just mentioned that have been the avant-garde, so to say. They also have visa freedom with the European Union, which, if we go back to when the Eastern Partnership was set up, was nearly unthinkable. I don't think anyone even dreamed of thinking in those terms. And then there's been sort of thousands of the small integrations and small cooperation schemes that have been there. If you look at the Eastern Partnership today, it is of course fairly challenging. We have a situation in Belarus, which is, to put it mildly, challenging. We have also, of course, Armenia and Azerbaijan that have just been at war with each other over Nagorno-Karabakh, and where that particular conflict has led to the fact that sort of the integration efforts that are at the core of the Eastern Partnership have, in that particular case, stalled quite a lot during these particular years. So we are at a moment in the history of the Eastern Partnership. Yes, we can look back at very substantial achievements, but it's fairly obvious that we also face fairly major challenges in the area.
Thank you. And as for Belarus, I've read your piece about with an approach that the scenario for Belarus should be different from scenario for Ukraine and rather closer to scenario for Armenia. Like not to bring them closer to the European Union, but maybe to protect the democracy within Belarus and to leave them, let's call it, in the Russian Lebanon, as Russians perceive it. Am I right that it's kind of your approach to solution in Belarus?
Well, you could say it's a overall approach. I mean, we don't want to be involved in a geopolitical competition with Russia or with anyone else. We want to give the best opportunities for each of the nations to develop as they want, in a democratic way, respecting their full sovereignty. And as Belarus, I mean, we just wanted to make clear that it's not a geopolitical issue. It's a question of democracy. If a democratic Belarus wants to have a security relationship with Russia, fine. Armenia, to take another example, which has been somewhat difficult because they decided to leave or not go into the deep and comprehensive free trade agreement, but instead to go into Eurasia customs union with Russia. That was driven by the security concerns that Armenia had. And we said we fully respect that. But we continued all of the other aspects of cooperation with Armenia, which I think was very important in the development of Armenian society during these years. So it's not a geopolitical game. It's a question of helping these nations to be democracies and fully sovereign, independent nations.
Thank you for this. And the three countries of the Eastern Partnership, Ukraine, Georgia, and Moldova, consistently declare their course towards joining the EU. To what extent do you see the prospects of future EU accession for each of the 6 Eastern Partnership countries? We discussed just Belarus.
Yeah. No, I mean for the three leading nations, I mean the aspiration is clearly there.
Yeah, I mean the full membership. Yeah.
Yeah.
What are the prospects on your point of view?
Yeah, the aspiration is clearly there. We had an election in Moldova the other day, fairly recently, where that aspiration was clearly expressed by the electorate of Moldova. It's clearly not on the table. It's a long way ahead. So I think it's better for the politicians of those particular countries to focus on the reforms and the modernization of their societies, which makes it possible to start a discussion on those terms. Where we are going to be when we are at that particular point in terms of the opinion inside the European Union, I think that's too early to predict. But clearly the treaties of the European Union says that any European country that expresses its desire and that meets the obligation of membership has the possibility to become full member.
Thank you. And the next question is based on our recent experience. At StrategEast, we publish a monthly newsletter on the state of affairs in the Eastern Partnership countries, which is prepared for us by experts from these countries. In course of preparation of the October bulletin, we received the following feedback from Armenian think tank, which we usually cooperate with. We do not know when we will be able to give the next piece because our expert who collaborated with you went to the military front. The two countries of the Eastern Partnership have come together in one of the bloodiest military conflicts in Europe in recent decades. Can the Eastern Partnership project take any steps to prevent such conflicts in the future?
Well, I'm not quite certain that the Eastern Partnership can do it, but I think that the arrangements that are now in place, I mean, we have a Russian peacekeeping force in Nagorno-Karabakh, and that means, I think, that any resumption of hostilities is virtually out of the question for years to come. The critical issue there would be to forge a lasting peace agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan, including the status of Nagorno-Karabakh. I don't think that will happen next week. I think first the emotions and sort of reactions to this particular conflict has to pass, and we have to go into a somewhat more calm situation. But such a peace agreement should be possible within the next 2 years. Then I think the Eastern Partnership really comes into play with sort of economic cooperation, civil society cooperation, modernization of the societies, when it will become possible to have far better cooperation in Southern Caucasus, Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan, where the potential is great, but where these particular conflict has been an obstacle to progress in the last decades.
And the only country that we have not discussed in particular is Georgia in the Caucasus. And the last election, some people claim that within the last 8 years, there is some backslide in the democratic processes in Georgia. And from your perspective, from the European Union, what is your take on the last elections in Georgia and the political processes within Georgia?
Well, I noticed the verdict of the international observers that gave sort of relative thumbs up to the election with a number of reservations. So I think we can note, yes, there have been, from certain points of view, a certain backsliding. But overall, I think that it's worth noting that sort of Georgia is still on the course of modernization and openness in spite of very major challenges.
Thank you. And one of the two priorities for the European Union following the green initiatives has been declared digital transformation. For you, as for the person who initiated the Eastern Partnership, what could be the digital Eastern Partnership and what new perspectives do you see in it?
Well, it's a question of the European Union helping the countries of the Eastern Partnership with the digital transformation. There are different ways of doing that, and it is on the agenda of the partnership that is there, and there are different schemes around. And of course, conditions are somewhat different in the different countries. We have sort of a startup IT industry in Ukraine. We do have one, as a matter of fact, in Belarus as well, strange enough. And I guess there are developments also in the Southern Caucasus. But help in that respect, I think would be important in order to advance these nations along the course of digital transformation.
Yeah, but do you see a digital transformation also as a way of making those countries more accountable, transparent, and the digital? I've seen once a report which is called Digital Benefits. I think prepared by the World Bank together with Thomas Ilves. Do you think that it's important also to integrate those countries into a single digital market of EU? And what could be the benefits for the social and the political transformation in these countries?
Absolutely, that would be important. I mean, the digital single market needs to be developed. It's not fully developed yet, but when it is, I do hope that these partnership countries will see the benefits of being part of it. Then there are significant benefits from the digitalization. I mean, to fighting corruption, which is a key item in all of these countries. There the digital technologies can help in transparency, for example, the registered public procurement, to take one example, which is often the source of quite substantial corruption in different countries. If you put everything online, so everything is visible, if you do what they've done in Ukraine, or there's an element of backsliding at the moment, where they put all of the incomes of all of the politicians and all of their assets online so people can see it. I mean, these things are very important. These steps of transparency made possible by digital technologies in order to fight the corruption that remains one of the biggest obstacles to the economic and social development of all these countries.
And the last question, when we're discussing an Eastern Partnership, it started as a political project that was about integration of the Eastern Partnership countries into EU, but also delivering the values, Western values, to those countries. But what is actually the economical essence of the project? I mean, how those countries could benefit from being associated in this way or another with the European Union, because always they're looking also for the carrots.
Well, I mean, you need only to look at the trade figures, and you can see the impact that the partnership has, particularly, or I mean, very particularly for the three countries that are part of the Deep and Comprehensive Free Trade Agreement. You've seen that the trade between them and the European Union has been increasing very substantially. And of course, increase in trade means that there will be an increase in prosperity. So it's very obvious that here the Eastern Partnership has delivered very clearly for those nations.
And if we look on the European producers, and amid the pandemic, we have seen that to be dependent on a single producer as China is actually makes you vulnerable. And I think that, what do you think about the initiative that they actually was published in a number of places of working with European producers in diversifying of their production chain and maybe relocating part of their production from China to Europe, Eastern Partnership countries, where the average salary today even is lower rather than in China? Could this initiative gain some traction in the EU?
It could, absolutely, but it's a question of sort of the countries reforming so that their business conditions are seen as credible. And I think here we are back to the basic issue of corruption. As long as there are suspicions that structures are corrupt, then there will be an impediment to investments. But long term, I mean, there's no question that the Eastern Partnership countries have excellent possibility to be sort of production locations. I mean, very close to the huge European market. It's still going to be one of the biggest markets in the world. Quick access to it, and good level in terms of cost, but also good levels in terms of competence and technology.
Mr. Bildt, thank you very much for this conversation, and again, congratulations on your award. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.